So tonight I'll be doing something different. I will be looking at these zines that were made of the projects that some of my mentees did over the years during my mentorship program. So during my mentorship program, some of the projects once completed, I encourage the making of these zines through MacCloud. I think MacCloud offers a service that is quite affordable so that you can make zines and then see what your projects look like in print format. And that allows a good sort of exercise in editing so that you see how it flows. So I'll show just, I think tonight I'll just pick like a handful, and then we'll just talk through the projects, look at what the mentees did, and then perhaps how the editing and sequencing were done for some of them. Okay, so perhaps the first zine or mentorship project we'll look at is Life in Love by Shui. Shui is actually a Burmese photographer. She's also part of the Thuma collective of female photographers. So she joined the mentorship program along with her other Thuma collective colleagues in 2018. So this was her project on her grandparents. So we chose this as a cover because I think it's an interesting image and it wraps around. I think it shows the relationship very well. And it wraps around from the back to the front. So it opens with this spread of the grandfather moving in and the grandmother sort of coming out from the doorway. I think it's stitched together. Then we move to a shot where it's a window and the play of the light and the texture. I think the green comes back here. This is a lovely shot. I think the grandparents donned their wedding outfit. Based on collaboration with Shui, they decided to do this shot where the grandparents recreated their wedding day, and this is taken on the bed. I love this shot. I think this, if I remember correctly, this was the first time that Shui sort of worked in this sort of manner, in this collaborative sort of portrait manner. So we move, some of the pink here comes here, allows us to transition to this page with the pink tablecloth and the two fish. So here, the pairing, the two, allows a transition to this where it's the two sort of slippers. The green again comes in from here, and the opening shot. And the pink here comes a bit in the highlights here. Shot of the pills, medication. So I think a lot of the photographs were actually taken on the bed. I think this was an idea that Shui and I sort of discussed, and we said, oh, it'll be good to have a lot of the images take place on the bed itself. If you remember in one of my previous episodes, I mentioned that when we create stories or visual stories and we make a story visually, it's almost like creating this world and then reducing that world into a set perimeter so that when the audience look at it, they totally submerge their belief in this world. So this is a beautiful portrait. I think one of my favorite shots. I think this is their son that passed away in the plane crash. Beautifully taken. Again, the colors are all sort of consistent. So when we edited the shots from the wide edit to to the tighter edit for the final output for the project, you know, there was a conscious choice to really zone in on a certain palette. So I love this shot as well, where the whole sort of household actually took part. Again, you see the green hues coming throughout the sequence on every page. This photo here sort of hints at a statement that Shui wrote in her synopsis. I'll read the line. While spending time with my grandparents helps give love a shape, I harbor a silent fear. If one of them is gone, how will the other remaining one remain? So this sort of harks back at that sort of bittersweet statement that Shui wrote. And then it comes to this image where she shot through the netting of them sort of lying. Again, it points back to that statement that I just mentioned. As you can see, the tones, the hues are consistent throughout. And it comes to this beautiful image that we used on the cover. Again, the hues, the greens, the pink, beautiful. And then we point, I think these at the end, we have this single shot of the grandmother alone as again a reference to the statement about Shui harboring a sullen fear and wondering, if one is gone, how will the other cope, because their bond is so tight. And this is another beautiful image of them sort of looking into the light. And I believe that's the second last image. So this is a lovely little zine put together of the edit that Shui did of a project, which is Life in a Love. So let's have a look at another one. This is Neither Beginning Nor End by Peter Tay. Peter Tay works as a graphic designer in Singapore. This is his second project or second mentorship he did with me. The first one was about turning 40, him and his friends sort of turning 40 and living and facing the questions of middle-agedness. So this is almost like a continuation of that. So I love this opening shot. We again laid it out, spreading from the front to the back. So when you look at it this way, you see the key elements of the hand touching the white cat, and I love the colors here. But it sort of goes into the back, and the statement is at the back as well. So we open with this spread, again taken within his private space, which I assume is his sort of bedroom here. I love the colors. So the blue, so the pastel sort of colors continue, very soft hues. So I believe this is with this project, this is the first time that Peter photographed in this manner, in this sort of format, this square format, and these sort of subtle, very sort of light hues. This is a photograph of his parents' wedding image. So I think one of the trickiest thing about doing projects, within a very confined space like one's house, it's always a challenge in terms of what to photograph and how to photograph. So I think for Peter, it took him a while, but he finally got there. So like I said, this project is a very personal one. It's about identity. It's also about choices and choosing how one lives one's life. And that conflict between choices, I guess. So it's all again over here. The final edit, we chose images that had a certain palette to them and that had a certain sensibility in terms of tone. So here, I think the magenta here comes in here. And I've mentioned in one of my previous edits that to do self-portraits or portraits of people that are around you, I think one needs to really let oneself go in front of the camera, because I think that's the way to really make images that come across as sincere and honest. Once I think portraits are highly contrived or highly constructed, they risk being a little contrived. I love this pairing of these two. Again, I think this is a nice sort of pairing. Then we introduce the red because it comes from the little sort of blood mark over here, transitions to this, and then that kind of allows us to introduce the red lantern. I think, as I mentioned also in one of my previous episodes, it's not necessary that when I look at the image as an audience that I understand everything about the particular image, but in the effect of this, all the images gives me a certain sense of what Peter might be feeling or expressing. And it's okay that my reading of it is a little bit ambiguous. I think the sense is more important. So this is Death by Drowning, a project done by Diane Rosario in Manila, Philippines. So Death by Drowning is a collection of photographs taken around Laguna Bay, the largest lake in the Philippines and one of the largest in Southeast Asia. So as you can notice here, the palette across is this slight hint of blue, this cool sort of lighting, and slightly overexposed. Very sort of meditative images. Meditative, yeah. So it's a combination of observed images and then images that I think she worked with some of the lake dwellers to make, like for example this image here. Once again, I think this is Diane's second mentorship with me. She did black sands, a project on black sands in Philippines previously. So this is another project by another young Filipino photographer, Christine Chung. The project was done quite a few years ago. It's called A Portrait of Us, and I'll read a little bit of her statement. So her opening line is, as someone diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder, it's hard to make people understand through words. I think that it would be better understand through visual imagery. So essentially this is another very personal project about identity and her sort of journey dealing with her bipolar sort of disorder. So again, the front page is this shot here, which wraps to the back. Yeah. So let's just flip through. So she was very young when she did this project with me during the mentorship. So one thing I like about this project was that it's very age appropriate, because essentially it's a portrait of her and her friends who are all sort of her age. I think sometimes when you look, a lot of young photographers, they tend to do projects that might not be age appropriate, in the sense that when I look at the project, it might, and if I were not to know the photographer and who the photographer is, I might feel that, the project is kind of shot by someone that's much older, for example. So I think anything is capable of being a project, even a portrait of friends of a certain age, then it becomes a portrait of that generation, for example. So I encouraged her to actually take images of her social friends, because essentially a portrait of a self-portrait is not necessarily just you standing in front of the camera. It's also who you are in terms of who is around you. So we laid it out this way. Or rather, I should put it this way. So I think in the edit we did, it kind of fluctuates between images that one could normally see of a young person's life, going out, partying, and then, a sense of like conflict when one is alone. Let's go here. So I felt the shifting of the orientation was appropriate for the subject matter, the idea of like having a certain discontinuity in mood because of a bipolar sort of disorder, for example. So doing your edits and then seeing them in print format is a very good exercise, and one that I encourage you to do. Even if you don't use MacPlug, you could go down to your local printer and just get cheap prints done, and then fold them into a book format, and then flip through them and see how the images flow. Okay, so thank you for listening, and hope again this was useful. Take care.